All right, well, here's our schedule for today. We have, we're going to do a brief community check-in, and then we'll have a few agency updates. We've got some updates to our Apple Leadership Conference that we wanted to share with you, and some updates to our Director's Handbook and our new Apple updated, this is an updated Apple Model Program Framework. And then we're going to be talking about some Utah Education Preparation Program standards that we've been working on. So let's get started. Let's start with our community check-in. Whenever anybody asks me this question, I used to think that basically I've covered all the big ticket items on my bucket list, but I ended up adding a new one like last week. So I guess I can't die yet. But for those of you who aren't familiar what a bucket list is, it's basically things that you want to do before you die or leave this world. So in our breakout room today, we're going to share one thing that we have on our bucket list. And if you don't really have a bucket list, then maybe something that you'd really like to do in the near future. Let's see, I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. Okay, so share one thing you'd like to do before you leave this life. Okay, I think we've got everybody back. It's great to hear everybody's items on that. Some fun things that we maybe I can add to my list now. Some great ideas. All right, so we're going to turn the time over to Andrew, who's going to share some updates on AEL renewals and extensions.
Thanks, Lisa. So I know the last two meetings we've discussed the criteria for renewing or extending an AEL. So we're not going to discuss that today. But you can always reach out if you do have questions about that, and I'm happy to meet with you or shoot you an email. We had originally hoped that maybe USIMS would be ready for these for the renewals by February 1st. So trying to be realistic now, we're going to push that back to mid-May, and just try to give us some time so we don't have to keep telling you that it's been pushed back. If it's not ready by mid-May, though, we'll just accept applications and probably have to do them manually at that time. So fingers crossed it'll be ready by then, but if it's not, we'll still process them anyway. And then as far as extensions are concerned, all of them that have been received have been processed. So those take all of about 30 seconds to do. So they should be, within the same day, unless I just don't think to check. So if you think someone's license should have been extended and it hasn't been yet, maybe talk to your candidate or shoot me an email and I can let you know if they even applied or if something got overlooked. But any questions about those?
So are you suggesting that we hold off on having our renewals submit anything, or?
Yeah, unfortunately right now USIMS just isn't up to the task at the moment. And right now we don't have another way for them to be submitted. And we're really hoping USIMS can do it because it will be a large number that has to be processed. So if USIMS can do it, like I just renewed my PEL last week and it was instantaneous. So ideally, if we could, let USIMS handle those, that would be, that'd save us a lot of time.
So this doesn't affect the PELs, right?
No, you can still renew a PEL. I mean, like I said, I just did mine and in it did it immediately. So any other questions?
I have
That's okay, Justin. We can wait if you need to.
While we're waiting for her to figure out her audio, one of just as a maybe point of information, USIMS is processing professional license renewals. There is still the banner that says they're not yet available, and that is just to kind of keep back the floodgates to make sure that the ones that are going through are being processed correctly. But if you we're hoping to take that banner down by Tuesday is our goal. But if you've got people who are just like anxious and like need to like have them go in and do it, it should work fine. We've had very, very few issues, unlike when we tried to release it in the 1st of February, and that didn't work, and we had to real quick roll it back. So it is working in USIMS. Even though there's a banner that says renewals are not yet available, just ignore the banner for a minute and just keep progressing. It should be fine.
I have a question. So on the extension form, the AEL extension form, it has the link that takes them to USIMS, and the educator is the one that is supposed to upload their form after HR has signed it. Is that correct? Okay, because somebody emailed my teacher and said that HR is the one that's supposed to upload those, but USIMS is asking for all their personal information. And so I didn't want to put that in on behalf of the teacher.
So there should be, so if they're going to USIMS, educators are the only ones that are going to USIMS.
Yes.
When they submit their extension form, that should happen through a Qualtrics survey, and they're uploading their form that has already been signed by HR.
Okay, yeah. So she was saying that I should have been the one to upload it through Qualtrics, but I didn't feel like that was true.
Either one is true. We don't
Okay.
care who puts it into Qualtrics. If you want to do it, if you want your educator to do it, we don't care.
Okay, thank you.
The only thing we really need HR directors to do is sign the form. So if that's all you want to do, that's fine. But we were intending the educator would submit the form either in Qualtrics or USIMS. Any other questions on AEL renewals and extensions?
Yeah, I have probably the silliest question. So when we're talking about extensions and renewals, are we talking about after the 3 years? If somebody
Yes.
needs to have more time?
Yes.
Okay.
I've got one, on the AEL renewal, it says they're not available for SPED and other, I can't remember specifically what besides SPED falls under that other.
So that's the service providers for SPED, like school psychs and SLPs.
Okay, so school
SLP and-
psychs, SLPs are not eligible for renewal either.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay,
Also preschool special ed, deaf ed, speech language technician.
and can I ask why that is, why they can't request a renewal?
It's federal law, special ed law, it's in the IDEA that no educator can perform those duties beyond, can work unprofessionally licensed for more than 3 years, period.
So if they haven't worked on it for 3 years, can they renew it?
They can extend it,
Okay, so if they haven't worked on it, they can extend it, but they can't renew it.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we're gonna move on. Oh, I see a question in the chat. Oh,
I was
Leah
just
just-
putting in all the license areas that fall under that you can't renew the AEL.
social worker was the one I missed. I was like, there's one more. I can't think. All right, so a couple of legislative updates. We have HB 190. This one is the one that adjusts the teacher salary supplement program. It basically takes away the 10-year requirement or having a degree major in the field. And then it also adds school social workers and school psychologists to the Grow Your Own program. Last I checked, it didn't have any money attached to it yet, but the rumor was that there was going to be, hopefully sometime. It might be in that first sub. There is a new sub for this that hasn't been adopted yet, but it's been assigned to a House committee, but there hasn't been a vote yet.
The budget that came out of Public Education Appropriations Committee did have a line item recommendation for an increase to the Grow Your Own. So even though it's not attached to this bill yet, if the bill passes, then the bill is likely to be assigned to that line within the budget. But that budget is just a recommendation to the Executive Appropriations Committee, and until they say, yes, this is where we're spending money, then that's
Okay.
where it needs to go.
Okay. And that, I believe, was Representative Peterson's. She submitted a request for appropriations for Grow Your Own. And she was requesting 4.2 million one-time funding, which is great because when we started the program, we only got 9 million one-time funding. So this would increase that funding for additional cohorts. We were hoping for ongoing funding, but we'll settle for, one-time funding as well. So that, it looks like that's met the first step, and we're hopeful that it will pass, but we won't know for sure until the end of the session, which is March 3rd at midnight. So we also have HB 295, which is the educator licensing amendments one that says that they could get a license without having a bachelor's degree. And that one's been sitting in the House Rules Committee since February 6th. Now, traditionally, that means that it's basically dead, but we've seen bills call them zombie bills because they get resurrected at the last minute. So we're going to keep our eye on this one and see if that one moves forward. It also has a pretty hefty fiscal note on there, so that may be why it's stalled, but we're going to keep an eye on that one. And then the last one that we've been looking at that would have some implications for licensing would be Senate Bill 35. And I'm glad Malia's here because Malia's been working on this one a lot. Basically establishes Utah as a partner state in the NASDAQ Interstate Licensing Compact, which means that for the states that are part of that compact, if they have a standard professional license in that state, they would automatically get a standard professional license in Utah when they apply for it. Anything you want to add on that?
The one thing that is addition, so the interstate licensing compact is specific to teachers, but there's additional language within the bill outside of the compact language that would extend basically the same rules to all license areas. So the licensing compact is like an even swap if you're coming from a state that's part of the compact and you're a teacher, but the rest of the bill covers everything else. So essentially, if somebody has a professional license and a year of experience under that license, then you get a professional license here and there are no other additional requirements in Utah.
And I was looking on the status of this one this morning. It says it's waiting in House rules since February 9th. Does that mean it's also stalled? Or is it we're just working on the fiscal impact?
They have resent it back for fiscal, but it was last I saw it's just being, it has to go to House rules because they modified the bill after. Anyway, it's still waiting. This one I'm pretty confident will push forward. There's a lot of really positive parts of this. It also includes DOPPEL licensing, and so it's not specific to educator licenses.
Rhonda asked in the chat, what if they don't have a year of experience?
So if they don't have a year of experience, the compact, if they don't have the year of experience and they're a teacher coming from a compact state, then they still get a professional license. But if they don't have the year of experience, then things like the PPAT would be required if they haven't done some sort of similar experience. Currently, the only state that's in the compact is Oklahoma. And the compact doesn't actually go to become real until there are at least 10 states, but 48 have expressed interest in becoming a part of the compact. Utah just is one of the first to have the appropriate legislative session.
Amy asked that we had mentioned back in time that you were asking the state for funding to help districts in APPEL implementation. I think they're talking about that licensing one that I forget what it's called now.
Yeah, the request was, so we made a business case request and the board asked of that to the legislature. It was not part of the public education appropriation budget, but that doesn't mean it's not possible for it to be in the in the executive appropriations budget that then is adopted. So it's right now, we're not sure, but we have some other funds that we're looking at trying to figure out how to best support or better support Apple implementation.
Shonda asked about timing. I'm guessing timing on the interstate compact.
So at the minute that it goes into law in Utah, which would be likely by May 1st. If there's 10 states, then we're in and it's immediate. Otherwise, it's whenever the law goes into effect in the 10th state. So my guess is sometime this summer is the latest that it would go, and then we would just be growing those compact states as time goes on.
And we had another question about, is the year of experience part of the compact or a Utah requirement? And that right now is a Utah requirement.
Yeah, so that's a Utah requirement, the year of experience. What the year of it currently, so there's current state, like the current policy is that if you have a year of experience, you don't have to do any of the testing. It waives testing. That's all the year of experience does. That's in board rule. If this bill passes, then if somebody has a year of experience, then they get whatever's the closest equivalent license at the professional level in the state of Utah. So we don't have to worry about testing or any of those other things.
And then if they were coming from a state that's part of the compact, which right now only Oklahoma is, but we're hoping to have more states join in the next couple months. And that year, they wouldn't need a year of experience to get a license.
No year of experience needed if they're in the compact.
Any other questions on that one? All righty, moving right along. I think we're still recording, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so a couple of updates on our Apple Leadership Conference. The good news is there isn't going to be a registration fee. Yay! Bad news is there's not going to be food, and we're not going to be able to provide mileage, and we're not going to be able to provide hotels or sub reimbursement unless you are a presenter and you live more than 50 miles away. So even though we had money budgeted and we were hoping to be able to provide that, it's apparently against state policy. So we're really excited that you're going to be able to come, and hopefully you can find ways to pay for your transportation there. And if you're a presenter, and according to our records, there's about 4 people who would fall into this category that they're presenting and they live at least 50 miles away. So we'll be reaching out to those few people and see if they would like us to get a hotel room. We can provide the hotel room for the day before you present. So if you're going to stay for both days, you'll have to pay for the hotel for the second day. We're also going to be adjusting the schedule just a little bit, probably about 10 minutes, so that it'll accommodate longer lunch break and breaks so you can get food and snacks off site. We're preparing a list of places that you can get to within about 7 minutes. And then understand there's possibly some vending machines on site, and there's a gas station across the street. So there's some possibilities there. And we're going to build in some time that you can satisfy your physical needs while you're there. And if you've RSVP'd, we're going to be sending some emails out in the next 2 days with this information. And if you're a presenter, we're going to be adjusting the schedule. So it'll probably change, either go up or down in time, about 10 minutes. But we'll send you an update on what the new time is. And if you have any concerns about any of that, feel free to reach out. Any questions?
Yeah, when is this and who is invited?
So this will be in March. It'll be March 20th and 21st. And I will put a link, if Andrew maybe can grab the link to the web page and put it in the chat, that would be great. And it's a Apple Leadership Conference. So anybody who is involved in helping Apple candidates through the program, this isn't geared towards candidates themselves, but any mentors, instructional coaches, Apple directors, That sort of thing will come. And on Monday, we've got sessions and we've got a keynote speaker. And then on Tuesday, we're going to be talking about teacher preparation competencies and developing and measuring and implementing those.
Great. And where is it?
It'll be at Davis School District offices.
Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions about the conference? Okay. And we would like to get some RSVP just so we have an idea of how many people are going to be coming. But we got to adjust the RSVP page because we don't need to know how far away you live and whether you need a sub anymore. So if you've already RSVP'd, don't worry about it. We've got your information. But as we add people, still encourage them to RSVP so that we have an idea of who's going to be there. And then Andrew just dropped the website in there. So we appreciate that. And then the RSVP form. Okay. Andrew, would you like to
Yeah,
do
so
this next?
we have updated the APPEL model program framework. Generally speaking, everybody in this meeting has an approved program already. So generally speaking, this may not really affect you. What we've done is we've condensed the framework from, I think it was 20 pages down to 13 pages. Where requirements may be being met by, for example, the educator competency section, those are met by the coursework because those are aligned generally to the general teacher preparation competency. So we combine some sections and it's really just focusing on the minimum requirements now. So there's a link there and you can open it up. We love feedback. We know there's some spacing issues and those we can't really fix until we take it back to Microsoft Word. It's just how it got uploaded. So like in a lot of places, there's like double spaces. It's kind of strange. But we love any feedback, and if you could provide that by March 1st, that would be great. If you do happen to be looking through it and you realize maybe there's something your program hasn't been doing, we'd love to have you reach out so that we could provide support to you and maybe a plan for how you can implement that over time. So any questions about this? Lisa, can you put the link in the chat? Yeah.
There you go. Oh. Nope, I sent it just to Joylyn. I apologize. Hold on just 1 minute. There we go.
I don't think we're going to take time to go through it as a group today, but we would love to get some feedback. And so I think everybody can leave suggestions. So please do that and we can consider those. Any other questions?
And we're hoping there aren't any big surprises here. That we made just a few changes that to line it to what we've shared in the handbook already. The template, the model program we had before was great, but there were some questions about whether this was just a great idea or whether it was actually required. And so we went back and we reviewed board rule to see, what is required in board rule. And then we're kind of calling this the minimum program. So, you're more than welcome to do more than this. In fact, we would love that. But this is kind of our standard of what would that minimum program look like. If your program's already approved, we're not going to go and put your program on probation based on any of this. But it is something we would like to have a conversation with to see how we could help your program meet that standard over time. So if you have any questions about that, let us know and we can work on that. And we'll when we get, so after March 1st, we'll collect your feedback, we'll make some adjustments, and then we'll put it on the website. And that's when it'll be official. So right now it's still in draft form. We just wanted to share it with you first before we release it. And that's also with the handbook, which I will also put a link in the chat. We're almost done with the handbook. I know we've shared it a couple of times. So if you haven't had a chance to provide feedback, now is your last chance. And we look forward to getting
And
that.
if you're, as you're reading that, if you're like, wait, how does this compare to my program now? If you don't have a copy of your approved program, maybe, you know, you weren't the director when it was approved, just shoot me an email. We have copies of all those, and I'd be happy to drop a copy of that in an email to you. So just let me know if you'd like a copy of your approved program.
And I know people, we've talked to people that like their program was approved in 2020, and then they've had a couple of personnel changes, or they've changed things and haven't let us know that there were changes. So if that happens, let us know, or they're not aware of what was approved originally because they're brand new. So that's always a good idea to check what we've got on file as opposed to what you guys have got. You can just make sure that that's the same. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit slow today. I'm trying to see the Apple Director's Handbook. Director Handbook. Let's see how good Google is. There it is. Found it. All right, we'll drop that link in the chat. Oh, no, make sure we're sending it to everybody this time. There it goes. Okay. Any other questions on that?
Lisa, yeah. So once that comes out and we start like making revisions, will we send that to you guys for like reapproval, or like will we work with you on having current approved program be reapproved, or what will that process look like?
So what we've, and there could be problem, you know, we've gone over it a couple of times. So if there's something that's inconsistent, feel free to let us know. But the idea is that everything that is listed in here are things that we've already been looking if we've done program reviews. And so I know we've recently reviewed your program, so there shouldn't be anything surprising because we've already discussed that as part of your program review. Things like observing teachers are things that weren't specifically called out in the model program. It was encouraged, but not everybody put that in their program. And when we went back and looked at the board rule, it did say as part of clinicals that teachers had opportunities to observe and practice their, you know, so, but what does that mean? So in it, we did kind of an attempt to, well, we would like educators to at least have one opportunity to observe a teacher in part of their program. So those kinds of things, if and I believe you're already working on getting that in if it's not already there. And but that's kind of, if you're looking at it, and this is for anybody, if you look at it and say, oh, this is asking our candidates to go observe teachers, we're not requiring that right now. But it's probably something we should do. If you just want to shoot us an email and say, hey, we reviewed that and we'd like to add that, but we're going to add it to our PLP starting in the fall so that our new educators are going to do that, that's fine. And we can just take care of that over email. We don't need to schedule, you know, a review or anything like that. It's just, it's good to have the information that you've noticed it, that you're working on it, and then we'll kind of tuck that away for our next conversation. Does that help?
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if we were doing like a whole formal, like
No.
rewriting of the whole thing and adding all those parts or whatever, or like, yeah, okay. That'll be good, thanks.
Mm-hmm. The second link is asking me to request access. Oh dear, let me fix that.
It's done, Lisa. They
Oh,
can.
did you? Wonderful,
Yeah,
thank you.
So now anybody can view it and leave comments. So
Awesome, thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay, next we have Oh, awesome. So any other questions so far? This is going to be entering our collaboration piece. So I just want to make sure we're good on the last parts. Okay, good. All right. So this is something new. Now I know we've had a lot of new things, and I just want you to say that I don't freak out, because this piece will probably take a couple of years to implement. We're just in the very baby stages right now. But it is important for us to get feedback on what we're calling our educator preparation program standards. A little bit of history here. In Utah code, and it's been in Utah code for years and years, it directs the state board to establish standards for educator prep programs that meet or exceed national standards. And previously, EPP was, our educator prep programs were defined as basically university programs. And university programs were engaging in, at the time, there was one national accreditor that all of the university programs went through. So there wasn't really a need for state standards because everybody was going through national accreditation. And then there was a falling out of that national accreditor, and the language that said that they needed to be nationally accredited was removed, and then it said that they needed to be state approved. But there wasn't a lot of clear guidelines on what state standards were being used for that approval. And so, but from what I understand, the university programs were still being accredited, and then the state would go as part of that accreditation and say, okay, well, as long as you're accredited by one of the national accreditors, then you're state approved. And then in 2020, we added a bunch of APPEL programs, both our LEA-based and our state-based program. And then there was some question about, do the APPEL programs need to go through accreditation? Probably not, because there's nothing in board rule that says that they have to be accredited. But it does say they need to be state approved. Well, what does state approval look like for APPEL as opposed to university? And there was a lot of discussion about, well, if they're educator prep programs, then we need to meet the same standards, but there wasn't a clear guideline on what those standards should be. So that's kind of where this comes in. And the big need is that we have common standards for all programs. Now, the idea is that this would apply not only for teacher prep programs, but also for like school leadership, school psych, any program that's going to be considered board approved in Utah. And then that led to, what do we value in Utah? What would we like to see all of our Utah prep programs? What standards should they be meeting? And we did kind of an internal review. We reviewed all the national standards and to see what some common themes were. And then we had an internal discussion, and then we created the standards draft version, and then we sent them out to some key stakeholders to get their feedback. And they've recently come back from those key stakeholders with the feedback. And now we'd like to share it out with a broader view of stakeholders before we send it out to public comment. So this is the first chance that we've been able to share this with our APPEL directors as a whole. And if you're not attending this meeting, I hope you get a chance to provide feedback afterwards when you're watching the recording, because this is something that I think is going to eventually be kind of the backbone of APPEL, as well as university programs and any focus of any program that's preparing educators for licensure. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of background of where this is coming from. We intend that these standards will eventually be used as part of program approval and review. And it might be we'd be asking for some evidence as part of the annual report. It's something that we may look at when we come and review your program, but we would do it gradually over time. It's not something we're just going to say, okay, everybody has to do this, by this certain date. With the university programs, they go through review every 7 years, and we would kind of tack on to that review process. And it's kind of a similar process with APPEL, but we kind of tend to go through every 2 or 3 years, depending on the program and their needs. So we'll be able to provide more details on how it's going to be implemented later, but the idea is that it's going to be gradual over time, because I know for some programs this is going to be a huge shift, and we don't want to move our cheese all at once. So any questions on that? Okay, So I'm going to show what standards here. So this first part basically just says what the intentions are for the standards. Some of the feedback that we got from our key stakeholder groups is that we would like to incorporate some reference to state code and board rule. And then it would be good to have some definitions. One thing that came up was, how do you define a clinical experience, which is currently defined in board rule, but what would that look like depending on how the programs are run? And then how are we defining mentor? I know with universities, they have kind of a university supervisor, they've got a cooperating teacher, are all those mentors, is an instructional coach at a school considered a mentor? And so I think the answer to that is yes, but we would like to provide some definitions and some clarification on that. Defining competency, and then kind of some background on what national standards we're talking about. The idea is that as we reviewed those standards, we found some common themes, and those themes have been incorporated into our standards because basically they're just good practice for preparing educators. And those themes are captured in our 3 standards. We have the first standard is basically focused on completer competency. So kind of a good indicator of a high quality preparation program is that their completers are competent. So that's kind of a no-brainer, but that's what that's focused on. And then the second standard is that there are systems in place to support candidate competency. And then we look at things like high quality clinical experiences, high quality mentors. And I think that's where the definitions will come in, is how do we define high quality, right? And then standard 3 is about program capacity and improvement, and then impact. So there's a standard here about, do we have the capacity to support the educators as reflected in staffing and institutional resources? Does the program have thoughtful continuous improvement practices by reviewing data and seeking opportunities for innovation? And then do the programs seek partnerships with stakeholders to strengthen the Utah education system? And the idea behind this is that, do we partner with other stakeholders? It could be state, local, national partners to strengthen the Utah education system. We are preparing educators for the schools. And so are we preparing them in a way that they're going to be beneficial in schools? There's a lot of ways that this standard could be met, but the idea is that we are partners in this work and that we're working with those other partners to strengthen the system as a whole. So that's overview. I'll give you a chance to look at these a little bit more in your breakout rooms. So we're going to do 3 groups, and I double checked to make sure you have access, but if you have trouble, let me know. So I'll put the link to this in the chat so you can access it. And then we'll just put you in random groups, I think, because that'll be a little bit faster. And then in your group, you'll just, and I apologize, but I know we've used the I wonder thing before, but next time we seek feedback, I promise we'll pick a different protocol. But we have the standards. So on here, you would say things that you like about the standards, things that you, questions that you had, or things that you would like to see incorporated would be put in this column. And if you want to have a discussion about it, that's great. Or if you just want to put your own thoughts in there and then leave, that's fine too. This is the last thing that we're going to be doing today. So we will come back for questions if you'd like, but if you don't have any questions, you're free to leave. So any questions on this collaboration process right now?
So are we all looking at the same, are we divided up into standards, like as group 1, standard 1, or are we just looking at the whole document?
Yeah, I thought it might be easier to break it up if we each had our own document. So I'll put you in your group, and then you'll pick the document that for the group that you're in. But if you want to just put it in one document, that's fine too. It's the same document for each group. So
Okay, thanks.
And I will open up the breakout rooms.
But are all 3 groups looking at the whole document or
Yes.
just one standard?
Yeah, yeah. The whole document. It's not very long, so I thought we've got like 20 minutes. So I think we've got time to review the whole thing. And because you're in a group with people, I think it would be good to have conversations about it, but we're not going to be facilitating that conversation, so it's going to be a little bit dynamic. And if we need to facilitate in the future, we're happy to do that. This is kind of an experiment. So any other questions on that? All right, I'm going to open up the room. Andrew's put in the link to group 1. We'll put in the link in the chat to the other groups. And if you're having trouble getting to your group, let me know and I can help you get there.
Lisa, I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
How do you see these standards fitting in with the existing programs? I'm really confused on the, like, I understand standards, but how this relates. Like, I'm not.
So after, assuming that these standards get approved by the board this summer, which is our plan, we would create, basically we would create an implementation plan. Right now we're imagining that implementation plan being that we would take components of the standards to implement at your next review cycle. So depending on where you are in that cycle at that time, we would say, because standard 1 is kind of what we're already doing, is that we're reviewing those candidates' files to see how they're meeting those competencies. So that one I don't think is going to be a huge lift. But we've talked a little bit about standard 2 in our follow-up discussions on the review, is, you know, how is your program doing? What kind of support do you need? So we may explore that standard a little bit more. We may add a question in the annual report to get some more feedback on that. So it would be baby steps. We would just take little components to focus on at the next review cycle. So we're not going to be doing it all at once. It'll be kind of a gradual process.